Are you someone that plays violin or is learning how to play violin and you're struggling with your tone? Every time you play, it's just the tone quality is really bad. It's like a scratchy sound or too airy of a sound, and you just can't get that consistent, rich, full, sweet violin sound. Well, if so, here are 5 things that are gonna help you instantly improve your tone quality and your sound when you're playing violin. And guess what? All these things actually have one thing in common. So if you know what that is, leave it in the comments, and be sure to stick around to the end of the video where I'll have a bonus tip for you as well. What's up, guys? I'm Justine. I've been playing violin for 18 years, and I've been a professional full-time musician for the past 4 years. Here are some tips that I have for you based on my own struggles as a kid when I was first learning violin and habits that I had to break down the line. I don't want that to happen to you. So here are some tips for you that you can work on as you're starting your violin journey to set yourself up for more success down the road. Number 1, straighten your left wrist. It's so important to have a straight wrist. You want your elbow in line with your hand. You don't want your wrist to be caving in or pushing out, because either of those two things will cause bad intonation and, not to mention, a lot of pain down the road, like arthritis and cramping in your hands. So this is something you want to work on early on and make sure it's straight. If you have your wrist too far in, you can run the risk of just playing flat, or your fingers can be kind of too flat. You want your fingers to be on the fingertips. You don't want to be flat fingering like that. So having your wrist straight with your elbow like this will help you naturally play more on the tips of your fingers, which is going to give you a way better sound quality and way better intonation. And same goes for if you're sticking your wrist far out. It can cause you to kind of play sharp and really cause a lot of tension in your hand, and it's going to hurt over time. Another thing you could do, you could tape a pencil to the back of your wrist, and if you are having the problem where your wrist is going like this, or tape it to the front as well. If you have that problem where your wrist is going out, you can feel it when you're doing that so that you can correct it. Tip number 2, keep it loose. Talking about your right arm, so take a look at your right arm. If you have a lot of tension in your wrist, in your shoulder, in your elbow, it can cause a shaky bow where you're gonna get that gritty sound. It's gonna have unevenness between your bow strokes. It's gonna be like too much pressure in one area, not enough in another area. So keeping your arm as loose and floppy as possible and flowy will help you kind of have a more consistent bow. That leads to a lot of tone problems if your bow is shaky or too much pressure. Some things to think about. I mentioned with your left hand how you want to keep it kind of straight. You kind of want the same thing with your right hand too. This is a proper bow hold. You want to have your wrist kind of in line and just in a flat line like this. You don't want to have your wrist pointing way up or way, I can't even hold it like that, to have it way down. You want it to be in a flat line with your elbow, and then just kind of try to keep it really loose. And a lot of your bowing is going to come from your wrist and your fingers. So you want to keep all this stuff really loose and really flexible. And make sure when you're bowing, watch yourself in the mirror. Think about what are you doing with your elbow? Is your elbow going up and down? Is it really tense? Think about your shoulder. Are you raising your shoulder? That was actually an issue that I had for a lot of years. Was I was lifting on my shoulder, I didn't even realize I was doing it. So one day I watched myself in the mirror and I saw that I was doing that because I would always get this pain in the back of my shoulder. And I was like, what is going on? I watched myself in the mirror and realized I was raising my elbow really high. So make sure your shoulder is down and your elbow is just kind of relaxed. It's not tight, and that will help you have a smoother bow stroke up and down. Number 3 is your tilt of your bow. If you're playing, watch yourself in the mirror. Again, are you facing your bow towards your body or away from your body? If you're facing it away from your body, you're gonna have a lot less control versus if you're facing it towards your body. I would do probably about a 45-degree angle. Flat to kind of a little bit of a tilt towards you will give you a lot of control when you go to set the bow down on the string so that you get a lot better attack. You don't get that bouncy da-da-da-da-da thing when you put your bow down. So try to keep it facing towards you, especially when you're down at the frog. I have noticed if I kind of tilt it towards me, I get a lot more control. So try to keep it facing towards you. And I actually had this problem when I was younger too. I would play with my bow facing out like this, and it actually caused my bow to warp from many years of doing that. So you end up getting a lot of shaky bow, especially when you're up at the tip of your bow. Tip number 4, your bow position on the string. Think about the space between the bridge and the fingerboard. Where are you playing? Where is your bow going? You want to aim for the middle section of that space between the fingerboard and the bridge. You don't want to be too close to the bridge. Experiment with this because you can have a lot of dynamic range depending on where you put it between the bridge and the fingerboard, but you want to have it closer to the bridge if you want a more forte, you want loud, crunchy sound, like intentionally, you know. And then as you go out towards the fingerboard, it gets a lot softer and more piano, like a lot quieter, a lot more wispy sounding. So down the road, as you practice this, you can use that to your advantage and kind of add some stylistic stuff when you're playing by moving your bow back and forth between those areas, as well as when you go higher up, like on the E string or any string, as you start climbing up fingerboard closer in those higher positions, you want to actually have your bow come closer to the bridge because you're going to get a lot cleaner sound that way. When you're playing, watch yourself in the mirror, see how far your bow travels. You don't want it to be moving left and right. You want it to be perpendicular to the strings on every string. So practice whatever you're playing, just try to keep it as straight as possible. These things too, by the way, they take a lot of years of practice, so don't expect to get it right away, but just try to keep it as straight as you can and perpendicular to the strings. As you get the hang of that, you can start playing around with different dynamics. Try playing closer to the bridge for more volume and try playing closer to the fingerboard. You can go past the fingerboard and into the black area of where the strings are, and you'll get that nice, soft, quiet, wispy kind of sound. Tip number 5 is your violin position. How are you holding it? Are you holding it way in close to your body and you're kind of slouching and your shoulders are rounding and you're all kind of tucked into a ball? Or are you holding it way out here and you're all spread out and you can't reach the strings very well? Notice that your bow is sliding all over the place. That's going to cause a problem with your tone. So think about your anatomy in general. If you have shorter arms, you might need to hold it a little bit closer into your right hand so you have more reach across the strings versus somebody that maybe has longer arms might need to hold it out a little bit further. But as a general rule of thumb, you just want to comfortably hold it over your left shoulder, having it parallel to the floor because you're going to have the best reach that way when it comes to your left hand and switching positions. Versus if you're kind of falling towards the floor, you're not going to be able to reach things as well. Especially when you're on the lower strings, you want to have that space for your elbow to kind of swing towards your body so you can reach those notes on the low G string. And then same with the E string, you want to be able to swing your arm out. So make sure when you're playing that your left elbow isn't resting on your hip or it isn't falling into your rib cage and resting against your body. You want to have it out away from your body, far enough to where you have that swinging motion, you have lots of movement there. That's going to help with your tone and your intonation, which overall will make you sound a lot better. All right, so if you made it this far, here's a bonus tip for you. I know this sounds obvious, but rosin. If you forget to put rosin on your bow, it's like playing pool with a stick that doesn't have enough chalk on it. And you know when you go to take a shot and you hit the ball and it just slips right off and the ball just kind of goes flying off to the other side? That's because you don't have enough chalk. And I think of rosin the exact same way with my bow. So if I don't have enough rosin on my bow, then I have that slippery feeling on the strings. I can't get good sound that way because it's slipping all over the place and you can't get that traction almost that you need, that the rosin helps to kind of give you. It gives you more of that like friction. And so always check your rosin. And also what I do when I put on rosin, I tap off the excess on my wrist just so I don't have too much. And then I end up with my violin all dusty and dirty. But also use a cloth and wipe down the strings periodically to get off that excess rosin because you don't want the opposite problem where you have too much and then you end up with a crunchy sound. What I do is I just kind of look down the length of my bow, check and see how much rosin is there. You can see a white dust on the bow hairs, so just kind of check that and see if you have enough rosin on there, because that is something that's going to improve your sound instantly. So if you made it this far in the video, congrats to you. Thank you so much for watching. The tone is everything. So I hope these tips were helpful to you. And if they were, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. And if I forgot any tips, like if you're another violin player and you're like, oh my God, I know another thing that will help tone, please share it with the community, post it in the comments, and let me know if I missed anything. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and a comment. Tell me what you think. You can also find me on Twitch. I stream 3 days a week. I do live live looping and music production and things like that. So yeah, come by sometime. All the links will be in the description for my socials, and I will see you guys in the next video.